In the vast expanse of the universe, humanity had always wondered if they were alone. They had sent out countless signals and messages into the void, hoping to find someone, anyone, who might be listening. But when the aliens finally came, it was not in peace. The first attack caught humanity off guard. Massive ships, far more advanced than anything humans had ever seen, appeared in the skies above Earth's major cities. The aliens fired devastating energy weapons, leveling buildings and causing chaos and destruction on a scale never before witnessed by mankind. Amidst the panic and confusion, one man emerged as a beacon of hope. Commander Zane Riker, a brilliant strategist and leader in the Earth Defense Force, took charge of the situation. He rallied the scattered human forces and organized a counterattack against the alien invaders. The battles were fierce and losses were heavy on both sides. The aliens' technology was far superior, and their strategies were ruthless and efficient. They seemed to have no regard for human life, and they attacked without mercy. Despite the odds stacked against them, humanity refused to give up. They fought back with every weapon at their disposal, from conventional missiles and fighter jets to experimental energy weapons and cybernetic enhancements. Commander Riker led his troops with skill and bravery, always at the front lines of the battle. He inspired his soldiers to fight harder, to never give up hope, even in the face of overwhelming odds. As the war raged on, humanity began to learn more about their enemy. They discovered that the aliens were a warrior race, bred for conquest and domination. They had conquered countless other worlds before setting their sights on Earth. But there was something different about humanity. Despite their primitive technology and their fragile bodies, humans possessed an indomitable spirit. They refused to surrender, refused to be conquered. As the losses mounted on both sides, Commander Riker knew that something had to be done. Humanity needed an edge, a way to level the playing field against the alien threat. He gathered a team of the brightest scientific minds from across the globe, tasking them with developing new weapons and technologies to use against the aliens. They worked tirelessly, pushing the boundaries of human knowledge and innovation. Meanwhile, Commander Riker led his forces in a series of daring raids against the alien bases and supply lines. They struck hard and fast, using guerrilla tactics and hit-and-run attacks to keep the aliens off balance. The tide of the war began to turn. The new human weapons proved effective against the alien shields and armor. The raids disrupted the aliens' ability to coordinate their attacks and resupply their forces. But the aliens were far from defeated. They regrouped and launched a massive counterattack, determined to crush the human resistance once and for all. Commander Riker knew that this was humanity's final stand. If they failed now, Earth would fall, and the human race would be enslaved or exterminated. He rallied his troops for one last desperate battle, knowing that the fate of the world rested on their shoulders. They were ready to fight to the last man, to make the aliens pay for every inch of ground they took. As the alien ships descended from the sky and the ground troops advanced, Commander Riker looked out over the battlefield. He knew that this was the moment that would define humanity's place in the universe. He turned to his soldiers, his eyes blazing with determination. "This is our final warning to the aliens," he said, his voice ringing out over the chaos of the battlefield. "We're ready, and we're waiting. Come and get us." With a roar of defiance, the human forces charged forward, ready to meet their destiny head-on. The final battle for Earth had begun. As the dust settled from the initial attack, Commander Zane Riker and his team worked tirelessly to understand the alien threat they now faced. The aliens had struck without warning or provocation, and their technology was far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. The first priority was to gather intelligence on the enemy. Riker sent out scout teams to observe the aliens' movements and gather any information they could. The reports that came back were grim. The aliens were a race of warriors, bred for combat and conquest. Their ships were massive, heavily armed and armored, and their soldiers were disciplined and ruthless. They seemed to have no regard for their own lives, let alone the lives of their enemies. Riker knew that humanity was facing an existential threat. If the aliens were not stopped, they would conquer Earth and enslave or exterminate the human race. He vowed to do whatever it took to prevent that from happening. The first step was to shore up Earth's defenses. Riker worked with military leaders from around the world to coordinate a global response to the alien threat. They pooled their resources and knowledge, sharing everything from weapons technology to tactical strategies. Under Riker's leadership, humanity began to fight back. They launched daring raids against the alien bases, using hit-and-run tactics to inflict maximum damage and disruption. They developed new weapons and technologies specifically designed to counter the aliens' advanced systems. But the aliens were quick to adapt. They changed their tactics, using their superior technology to outmaneuver and outgun the human forces at every turn. They seemed to be able to anticipate every move the humans made, as if they had some sort of advanced intelligence-gathering capability. Riker knew that they needed a new approach. He gathered a team of the brightest minds from across the globe, including scientists, engineers, and military strategists. Together, they began to develop a plan to take the fight to the aliens. The key, they realized, was to understand the aliens' technology. They needed to find a way to neutralize the aliens' advanced weapons and defenses, and to turn their own technology against them. The team worked tirelessly, poring over every scrap of intelligence they had gathered on the aliens. They reverse-engineered captured alien technology, studying it to find weaknesses and vulnerabilities. Slowly but surely, they began to make progress. They developed new weapons that could penetrate the alien shields and armor, and new defensive systems that could withstand the aliens' attacks. They even managed to hack into the aliens' communication networks, gathering valuable intelligence on their movements and plans. But the aliens were not content to sit back and let the humans gain the upper hand. They launched a massive counterattack, striking at key human bases and installations around the world. The battles were fierce and bloody, with heavy losses on both sides. Riker led his forces from the front, always in the thick of the fighting. He inspired his soldiers with his bravery and determination, never backing down even in the face of overwhelming odds. Despite their best efforts, however, the human forces were slowly being pushed back. The aliens' technology was simply too advanced, and their numbers too great. It seemed that humanity's final stand was doomed to fail. But Riker refused to give up. He knew that surrender was not an option. If humanity was going to go down, they would go down fighting, taking as many of the aliens with them as they could. As the final battle approached, Riker gathered his remaining forces for one last desperate gamble. They would launch an all-out assault on the aliens' main base, using every weapon and tactic at their disposal. It was a suicide mission, but it was the only chance they had. Riker stood before his soldiers, his eyes blazing with determination. "This is our final warning to the aliens," he said, his voice ringing out over the din of battle. "We will never surrender. We will never stop fighting. We're ready, and we're waiting. Come and get us." With a roar of defiance, the human forces charged forward, ready to meet their fate head-on. The battle for Earth had begun, and only one side would emerge victorious. Commander Zane Riker stood at the command center, his eyes fixed on the screens displaying the latest intelligence reports. The alien threat was growing stronger every day, and humanity's chances of survival were looking increasingly slim. But Riker refused to give up hope. He knew that if humanity was going to have any chance of defeating the aliens, they needed to be prepared. They needed to have every possible advantage, every weapon and strategy at their disposal. And so Riker set to work. He gathered the best and brightest minds from around the world, bringing them together to form a special task force dedicated to finding a way to stop the aliens. The task force worked tirelessly, poring over every scrap of data they could find on the aliens and their technology. They analyzed the aliens' weapons, their ships, their tactics, looking for any weakness or vulnerability that could be exploited. At the same time, Riker oversaw the development of new weapons and technologies designed specifically to counter the alien threat. Scientists and engineers worked around the clock, pushing the boundaries of what was possible in order to give humanity a fighting chance. One of the most promising developments was a new type of energy shield that could withstand even the most powerful alien weapons. The shield worked by creating a field of charged particles around the object it was protecting, effectively absorbing and dissipating any incoming energy attacks. Another key breakthrough was the development of a new type of missile that could penetrate the aliens' advanced defenses. The missile used a combination of electromagnetic and kinetic energy to overwhelm the alien shields and deliver a devastating payload. But perhaps the most important development of all was the creation of a new type of soldier. Using advanced cybernetic enhancements and neural implants, these soldiers were faster, stronger, and more resilient than any human had ever been before. Riker knew that these soldiers would be the key to turning the tide of the war. He handpicked the best and brightest from the ranks of the military, putting them through a grueling training regimen designed to push them to their limits and beyond. As the task force continued its work, Riker turned his attention to the broader strategic picture. He knew that if humanity was going to have any chance of winning this war, they needed to present a united front. And so, he set about forging alliances with leaders from around the world. He worked tirelessly to convince them of the severity of the threat they faced, and the need for global cooperation in the face of this unprecedented challenge. Slowly but surely, Riker's efforts began to bear fruit. Nations that had once been bitter enemies put aside their differences and joined forces, pooling their resources and expertise in the fight against the alien menace. As the preparations continued, Riker couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in what they had accomplished. Humanity had come together in a way that had never been seen before, united by a common purpose and a shared determination to survive. But Riker knew that the real test was still to come. The aliens were growing bolder and more aggressive with each passing day, and it was only a matter of time before they launched their next major offensive. And so, Riker redoubled his efforts, pushing his team to work harder and faster than ever before. They needed to be ready for whatever the aliens threw at them, needed to have every possible advantage in the coming battle. As the final preparations were made, Riker addressed his troops one last time. "We've come a long way," he said, his voice ringing out across the command center. "But the real fight is still ahead of us. The aliens think they can break us, but they're wrong. We're ready, and we're waiting, and we will not back down until the job is done." With those words, Riker turned to face the screens once more, his jaw set with determination. The final battle was about to begin, and humanity's fate hung in the balance. But with Riker leading the charge, they knew they had a fighting chance. They were ready, and they were waiting. And they would not rest until the alien threat was defeated once and for all. Commander Zane Riker stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force's flagship, the EDS Titan, his eyes fixed on the view screen before him. On the screen, a massive alien base loomed, its towering spires and gleaming metal surfaces a stark contrast to the barren, rocky landscape that surrounded it. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for. The alien base was a key strategic target, a hub of activity, and a center of command for the alien forces. If they could take it out, it would be a major blow to the aliens' ability to coordinate their attacks and resupply their troops. Riker turned to his bridge crew, his expression grim. "This is it, people," he said, his voice steady and commanding. "We've got one shot at this. Let's make it count." The crew nodded, their faces set with determination. They knew what was at stake, knew that the fate of humanity rested on the success of this mission. As the Titan approached the base, Riker gave the order to launch the attack. A swarm of smaller ships, each one piloted by a human soldier, detached from the Titan and sped towards the alien base, their weapons primed and ready. The aliens were quick to respond, launching their own fighters to intercept the human ships. The space around the base erupted into a maelstrom of laser fire, and exploding ships as the two sides clashed in a desperate battle for supremacy. But the humans had a secret weapon. Using the advanced technologies they had developed, they were able to neutralize the alien shields and penetrate their defenses. The alien ships began to fall, one by one, as the human fighters pressed their advantage. On the ground, human troops stormed the base, using their enhanced strength and speed to overwhelm the alien defenders. They fought their way through the twisting corridors and cavernous chambers of the base, taking out alien soldiers and sabotaging key systems as they went. Riker monitored the battle from the bridge of the Titan, his eyes glued to the tactical displays. He could see that they were making progress, but he knew that the fight was far from over. Suddenly, a massive energy surge lit up the tactical display. The aliens were bringing their main weapon online, a devastating beam of pure energy that could wipe out an entire fleet of ships in a single blast. Riker knew that they had to act fast. He ordered the Titan to move in closer, putting itself between the alien base and the human fleet. The Titan's shields strained under the onslaught of alien fire, but they held. With a final, desperate push, the human troops broke through the last line of alien defenses and stormed the base's command center. There, they found the alien leader, a towering creature with glowing eyes and a cruel, twisted smile. The alien leader laughed as the human soldiers surrounded him, his voice a guttural growl. "You think you've won?" he sneered. "You have no idea what you're up against. We will crush you like the insects you are." But Riker and his team were not intimidated. They had come too far, fought too hard, to be stopped now. With a final, decisive blow, they took out the alien leader and destroyed the base's main power core. The effect was immediate. The alien ships began to falter and fall, their systems shutting down as the base's power supply was cut off. The human fleet pressed their advantage, picking off the remaining alien ships one by one. As the last alien ship exploded in a brilliant burst of light, a cheer went up from the human fleet. They had done it. They had struck a major blow against the alien forces and shown them that humanity was not to be underestimated. But Riker knew that this was only the beginning. The aliens would not take this defeat lying down. They would regroup and come back stronger than ever. The fight for Earth's survival was far from over. As the Titan and its fleet turned to head back to Earth, Riker addressed his crew once more. "You've done well today," he said, his voice filled with pride. "But the war is not over. The aliens will be back, and we must be ready. We will not rest until Earth is safe, and the alien threat is defeated once and for all." The crew nodded, their faces set with determination. They were ready for whatever came next. They were the Earth Defense Force, and they would not back down. They were ready, and they were waiting, and they would fight to the last man, to the last ship, to the last breath, to defend their home and their people. The celebrations of the successful counterattack against the alien base were short-lived. Just as Commander Zane Riker had predicted, the aliens were quick to retaliate, launching a massive offensive against humanity's defenses. The alien ships came in waves, each one larger and more heavily armed than the last. They bombarded the Earth's surface with a relentless barrage of laser fire and plasma bombs, leveling entire cities and reducing vast swaths of land to smoldering rubble. Humanity fought back with everything they had, but it was a losing battle. The aliens' technology was simply too advanced, their numbers too great. One by one, the Earth's defenses fell, until only a handful of scattered resistance pockets remained. Among those was the Earth Defense Force's main base, a sprawling underground complex that housed the last of humanity's military might. It was here that Commander Riker and his team made their stand, determined to hold out as long as they could. But the aliens were not content to simply besiege the base. They launched a massive ground assault, sending wave after wave of heavily armed troops to storm the complex and wipe out the human defenders. The fighting was brutal and bloody, with both sides taking heavy casualties. The human soldiers fought with a desperate ferocity, knowing that they were the last line of defense between the aliens and the civilians huddled in the base's deepest levels. Riker was in the thick of the fighting, leading his troops from the front lines. He fought with a skill and bravery that inspired those around him, taking out alien soldiers with precise shots from his plasma rifle and hand-to-hand combat moves that left his enemies reeling. But even Riker's legendary skills were not enough to turn the tide. The aliens kept coming, their numbers seemingly endless. The human defenders were forced back, step by step, until they were fighting in the very heart of the base itself. It was there that Riker faced his greatest challenge yet. A massive alien warrior, clad in advanced armor and wielding a devastating energy blade, broke through the human lines and charged straight for the command center. Riker knew that if the command center fell, the base would be lost. He rallied his remaining troops and made a desperate stand, engaging the alien warrior in a furious duel that lit up the corridors with flashes of energy and the clash of metal on metal. The two warriors fought with a speed and ferocity that was almost too fast for the human eye to follow. They exchanged blows that would have shattered concrete, their weapons flashing and sparking with each impact. But in the end, it was Riker who emerged victorious. With a final, desperate lunge, he drove his plasma blade through the alien warrior's chest, sending it crashing to the ground in a shower of sparks and blood. The defeat of the alien champion seemed to take the fight out of the remaining alien troops. They fell back, their advance faltering as they realized that the humans would not go down easily. But Riker knew that the respite was only temporary. The aliens would regroup and come again, with even greater numbers and even more advanced weapons. The base was lost, and with it, humanity's last best hope for survival. With a heavy heart, Riker gave the order to evacuate. The remaining civilians and wounded were loaded onto transport ships, while the able-bodied soldiers prepared to make a fighting retreat. As the ships lifted off, Riker stood on the landing pad, watching as the base disappeared into the distance. He knew that they had suffered a terrible defeat, but he also knew that the fight was not over yet. Somewhere out there, in the vastness of space, there were other human colonies, other worlds that had not yet fallen to the alien threat. And as long as even one human remained, the fight would go on. Riker turned to his remaining soldiers, his eyes blazing with a fierce determination. "We may have lost this battle," he said, his voice ringing out over the roar of the ship's engines. "But the war is not over yet. We will regroup, we will rebuild, and we will come back stronger than ever. The aliens may think they have beaten us, but they have no idea what they're up against. We're ready, and we're waiting. And we will not stop until the Earth is ours once again." The final battle had begun. The alien forces had converged on the last remaining human stronghold, a massive fortified complex deep underground. They came in endless waves, their ships darkening the sky and their troops swarming over the barren landscape like a plague of locusts. But the humans were ready for them. Led by Commander Zane Riker, they had prepared for this moment, stockpiling weapons and supplies, fortifying their defenses, and training their soldiers to fight with a ferocity and determination that matched the aliens' own. As the alien troops advanced on the complex, Riker and his team were already in motion. They had planned for every contingency, every possible angle of attack, and they were determined to make the aliens pay for every inch of ground they took. The first wave of aliens hit the outer defenses like a tidal wave, crashing against the walls in a furious assault of laser fire and plasma bombs. But the humans held firm, their advanced energy shields absorbing the brunt of the attack, and their own weapons answering in kind. Riker was at the forefront of the defense, rallying his troops and leading them in a series of daring counterattacks. They struck at the aliens' flanks and rear, using hit-and-run tactics to disrupt their advance and take out key targets. But the aliens were relentless. They kept coming, wave after wave, their numbers seemingly inexhaustible. The human defenders fought with everything they had, but they were slowly being pushed back, forced to give ground inch by bloody inch. In the heart of the complex, Riker knew that they were running out of time. The aliens were closing in, and if they breached the final defenses, it would all be over. He gathered his most trusted soldiers, the elite of the elite, and prepared for a final desperate gamble. They would take the fight to the aliens, striking at the heart of their command ship in a daring raid that would either turn the tide of the battle or end in their own destruction. As the alien troops continued to batter at the complex's defenses, Riker and his team slipped out through a secret tunnel, making their way to a hidden hangar where a squadron of advanced fighter ships waited. They took to the skies, streaking towards the massive alien command ship that hung in orbit above the planet. The ship was a behemoth, bristling with weapons and shielded by an impenetrable energy field. But Riker had a plan. Using the advanced stealth technology that had been reverse-engineered from captured alien tech, they slipped past the ship's outer defenses and made their way to the shield generator at its heart. It was a desperate, all-or-nothing gamble. If they could take out the shield generator, the command ship would be vulnerable, and the human fleet could move in to finish the job. If they failed, they would be trapped on the ship, at the mercy of the alien warriors who swarmed its corridors. In a furious firefight that lit up the ship's interior, with flashes of laser fire and explosions, Riker and his team fought their way to the shield generator. They took heavy casualties, but they pressed on, driven by a desperate determination to see their mission through to the end. Finally, they reached their target. With a final, desperate push, they overloaded the generator's power core, sending a massive surge of energy rippling through the ship's systems. The effect was immediate. The command ship's shields flickered and died, and the human fleet moved in, unleashing a barrage of weapons fire that tore through the ship's hull and sent it spiraling towards the planet's surface in a ball of flaming wreckage. On the ground, the alien troops faltered, their advance grinding to a halt as they realized that their command ship had been destroyed. The human defenders seized the opportunity, launching a massive counterattack that drove the aliens back, sending them retreating in disarray. As the battle raged on, Riker and his team fought their way back to the surface, battered and bloody but victorious. They emerged from the wreckage of the command ship to find the human forces surging forward, the tide of the battle turning in their favor at last. In the end, it was humanity's courage, determination, and ingenuity that carried the day. The aliens were defeated, their forces scattered and broken, and the Earth was saved from the brink of destruction. But for Riker and his soldiers, the fight was not over. They knew that the aliens would be back, that this was only the beginning of a long and bitter struggle for survival. But they were ready, and they were waiting. And they would never stop fighting, never stop defending their home and their people until the very last breath. In the aftermath of the final battle, the Earth lay in ruins. The once great cities were now nothing more than piles of rubble and ash, and the lush green forests and fields had been reduced to barren wastelands. But amidst the destruction, there was also hope. The human race had survived, thanks to the bravery and sacrifice of Commander Zane Riker and his soldiers. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious, beating back the alien threat and securing a future for their people. As the survivors emerged from their underground bunkers and hidden bases, they looked upon a world that had been forever changed. The old ways were gone, and a new era had begun. Riker knew that the road ahead would not be easy. The Earth had been devastated, and it would take years, perhaps even generations, to rebuild what had been lost. But he also knew that the human spirit was strong, and that together they could overcome any challenge. In the days and weeks that followed, Riker worked tirelessly to help his people recover and rebuild. He organized teams of survivors to search for supplies and resources, and he worked with the remaining military and government leaders to establish a new system of governance and order. At the same time, he knew that they could not afford to let their guard down. The aliens had been defeated, but they were not gone. There was always the chance that they could return, stronger and more determined than ever. To that end, Riker began to work on establishing a new relationship with the alien races that had once been their enemies. He knew that if humanity was to survive in the long term, they would need to find a way to coexist with the other intelligent species of the galaxy. It was a difficult and delicate process, but slowly progress was made. Riker and his team negotiated treaties and agreements with the alien leaders, establishing trade routes and diplomatic channels. They worked to find common ground and build bridges of understanding, even as they maintained a strong military presence to deter any future aggression. As the years passed, the Earth began to heal. Cities were rebuilt, and new communities sprang up in the place of the old. The human race adapted and evolved, learning from the hard lessons of the past and striving to create a better future. Through it all, Riker remained a constant presence, a symbol of hope and leadership for his people. He continued to serve as the commander of the Earth Defense Force, but he also took on new roles and responsibilities, becoming a statesman and a diplomat as well as a soldier. But even as he worked to build a new world, Riker never forgot the sacrifices that had been made to get them there. He carried the memory of his fallen comrades with him always, and he worked to honor their legacy by building a society that was worthy of their sacrifice. And as he looked to the future, Riker knew that there would be new challenges and new threats to face. The universe was a vast and unpredictable place, and there was always the chance that they would once again find themselves in the midst of a great and terrible conflict. But he also knew that the human spirit was indomitable, and that as long as they stood together, they could face anything that the cosmos could throw at them. They had proven their strength and their resilience, and they would continue to do so, no matter what the future might hold. As Riker stood on the bridge of his ship, looking out at the stars, he felt a sense of pride and purpose that he had never known before. He knew that he had been a part of something great and noble, something that would be remembered for generations to come. And he knew that no matter what might come next, he would be ready. He and his people had faced the worst that the universe had to offer, and they had emerged stronger and more united than ever before. They were ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, and they would face them with the same courage, determination, and indomitable spirit that had carried them through the darkest of times. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The human race would never back down, never surrender, and never stop fighting for their place among the stars. They were ready, and they were waiting, and they would never be defeated. As the dust settled and the rebuilding began, Commander Zane Riker took a moment to reflect on all that had happened. The war with the aliens had been the greatest challenge humanity had ever faced, and the cost had been unimaginably high. Millions had died, and entire cities had been reduced to rubble. But through it all, the human spirit had endured. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious, thanks to their courage, their determination, and their unwavering belief in themselves and each other. Riker knew that the road ahead would not be easy. There was so much work to be done, so many challenges still to face. But he also knew that they had the strength and the resilience to overcome anything that stood in their way. As he looked out over the ruins of what had once been a thriving metropolis, Riker couldn't help but feel a sense of hope and optimism. Yes, the war had been devastating, but it had also brought out the best in humanity. It had shown them what they were truly capable of when they stood together. And now, as they began the long process of rebuilding and healing, Riker knew that they would need to hold on to that sense of unity and purpose. They would need to work together, to support and care for one another, and to never lose sight of what truly mattered. In the years that followed, Riker continued to lead his people with wisdom, compassion, and unwavering resolve. He worked tirelessly to help them rebuild their lives and their world, and to create a future that was brighter and more hopeful than anything they had known before. He forged new alliances with other species, both on Earth and beyond, knowing that cooperation and understanding were the keys to lasting peace. He invested in science, technology, and education, knowing that knowledge and innovation were the foundations of progress and prosperity. And through it all, he never forgot the lessons of the war. He never forgot the sacrifices that had been made, or the incredible resilience and strength of the human spirit. He carried those lessons with him always, and he worked to instill them in the hearts and minds of every person he met. As the years turned into decades, Riker watched with pride as humanity continued to grow and thrive. They reached out to the stars, exploring new worlds and new frontiers. They built great cities and towering monuments, and they created works of art and beauty that would endure for generations. And always, they remembered. They remembered the heroes who had fought and died to defend their way of life. They remembered the incredible courage and sacrifice that had carried them through the darkest of times. And they remembered the unbreakable bonds of love, friendship, and community that had sustained them through it all. In the end, that was what truly mattered. Not the battles won or lost, not the cities rebuilt or the alliances forged, but the simple, enduring power of the human spirit, the power to hope, to dream, to love, and to never, ever give up. And as Riker looked back on his life and all that he had accomplished, he knew that he had been a part of something truly special. He had helped to lead his people through the greatest crisis they had ever known, and he had seen them emerge stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. He knew that there would be more challenges ahead, more obstacles to overcome, and more battles to fight. But he also knew that they would face those challenges together, with the same courage, determination, and indomitable spirit that had carried them through the war. And so, as he stood on the bridge of his ship once more, looking out at the endless expanse of stars and galaxies before him, Riker felt a sense of peace and contentment wash over him. He knew that he had done his part, and that the future was in good hands. The war was over, but the journey was just beginning. And as long as the human spirit endured, as long as they stood together and never lost sight of what truly mattered, there was nothing they could not achieve. The aliens had been warned, and they had been defeated. But the greatest victory of all was the one that humanity had won over themselves. The victory of hope, of love, and of the unbreakable bonds that tied them together, now and forever.